Hi guys, it's time for Rogues Reads, and it is a Friday afternoon. Well, it's not actually when I'm recording this, but when you're watching it, it's supposed to be Friday afternoon. None of my furry friends wanted to come and do book club with me today, so they're all taking naps, I guess. You just get me today, and we are ready to start The Genius Files, You Only Die Twice by Dan Gutman. So thank you to Dan Gutman and HarperCollins Publishing for allowing us to share this book this way. This is book 3 in the series. So we're going to get started. We're going to do a really quick recap of what happened. If you've been following along so far, you know Pep and Coke are twins that just turned 13. They're on a cross-country trip with their parents. In an RV, they were driving from California, where they lived, to Washington, D.C. for their Aunt Judy's wedding. They have not seen Aunt Judy in 10 years. None of them remember what she looks like. Their mom and Aunt Judy got in a big fight. And when they arrived at the wedding, they discover that Aunt Judy is marrying, or is about to marry, Dr. Herman Warsaw, the man who's been trying to kill Pep and Coke for 2 books, and who they actually thought was dead. So, a lot of excitement at this wedding, and we are ready to dive in. Actually, before I dive in, I thought I was ready to dive in. It's a pretty decent sized book. I would like to finish it before Rogues Reads ends on May 22nd. So I may run a little bit longer on these, just because I want to make sure we get the whole book in, and it's a pretty good sized book. So no more chit chat, here I go. Chapter 1, Stuff You Missed. There were 10 items on Coke McDonald's to-do list for the month of July, but getting thrown into a giant shredder was not one of them. Clean the toilet in the RV was on the list. Send postcards home was on the list. Buy souvenirs was on the list. Work on summer reading was on the list. But nothing about getting thrown into a giant shredder. And yet, oddly enough, getting thrown into a giant shredder was the one thing that Coke McDonald was actually going to do during the month of July. Like a paper shredder? Ugh. Wait a sec. Before I tell you how Coke McDonald was thrown into a giant shredder, it's really important for you to read a book called The Genius Files, Never Say Genius. Because if you didn't read that book, this one will make no sense at all. So ask your librarian, ooh, me, for a copy and read it. Then come back and start this one again. Fair enough? Go ahead. I'll wait. You don't even have to get a copy from me. You can just go back, oh my goodness, 6 weeks and follow along from there. Did you read it? You did not. Actually, I'm going to assume if you're watching this video, you have read them. Look, it's really important that you and I have an honest relationship during the time we're spending together between these covers. And if you can't be honest with me here on page 2, what's it going to be like when we get to the big surprise ending on page 284? Don't you dare turn to page 284 to see the surprise ending. How could you even think of doing such a terrible thing? Look, just read the book, okay? What do you have to do that's more important? Watch some dumb reality TV show about people baking cakes? Watch videos of cats playing the piano on YouTube? I really like baking shows. Okay, fine. Don't read The Genius Files, Never Say Genius. See if I care. Look, I'll make a deal with you. If you read this book, I'll tell you what happened in the last one in just 8 breaths. Deal? Okay, this is what you missed. We're going to see if I can do this. I don't know. The story started on Coke and Pepsi McDonald's 13th birthday, June 25th. The twins were still in shock after having pushed the evil and insane Dr. Herman Warsaw out of the Infinity Room to his death at the house on the rock in Wisconsin. They were happy with the lame birthday presents their clueless parents gave them, a bag of genuine Wisconsin cheese curds and 2 yellow foam cheese heads. The family continued on their cross-country journey that had started in California, heading for their Aunt Judy's wedding in Washington, D.C. on July 4th. Mrs. McDonald runs a popular website called Amazing But True, so along the way, she insisted on stopping at oddball tourist attractions such as the National Western Museum, where she purchased a Poop on You toilet seat, and the National Dairy Hall of Fame, where the family learned about pioneers such as Harvey D. Thatcher, the inventor of the glass milk bottle. Wow, you didn't read the book. You actually might have learned something. Whew, okay. Anyway, when they arrived at the first McDonald's restaurant in Des Plaines, Illinois, Coke and Pep encountered Archie Clone, a fellow teenage genius filer who was in fact an evil madman who aspired to follow in Dr. Warsaw's footsteps. He invited them into what appeared to be an interactive exhibit called the Multimedia World of French Fries, but it was in fact a death trap. Seconds before Coke and his sister were dipped into boiling oil, Coke jammed his cheese head into the gears to stop the ridiculously slow-moving wire basket and save their lives. Some birthday, huh? The next stop was a Cubs game in Chicago's famed Wrigley Field, where Coke and Pep were reunited with the germphobic Mrs. Higgins, a hired assassin who worked for Dr. Warsaw when she wasn't teaching health at Coke and Pep's school back in California. She had given up killing innocent children, she said, and had taken a job in the Cubs' public relations department. She has excellent people skills, apparently. Mrs. Higgins told the Twins there was a bomb in the Cubs' dugout that would go off when they sang the last line to take me out to the ballgame. It was a lie, of course, but the result was that the entire ballpark had to be evacuated and the game forfeited to the hated St. Louis Cardinals. Can't do it. The Twins were forced to run for their lives out of Wrigley, chased by an angry mob of frustrated Cubs fans whose team usually finds a way to lose without any outside help. Mrs. Higgins, by the way, also revealed that she was madly in love with Dr. Warsaw, so she was doubly furious at the Twins because they killed her boyfriend, and now it is highly unlikely that he will ever marry her. Still with me? Good. Because he's marrying Aunt Judy. Right. Continuing east from Chicago, the McDonald family stopped off to see Michael Jackson's boyhood home in Gary, Indiana, the largest egg in the world, in Mentone, Indiana, a pair of pants worn by the tallest man in the world. And you would think that Cedar Point, one of the greatest amusement parks in the world, would be nothing but fun, but it was there in Sandusky, Ohio, where the Twins were kidnapped off a roller coaster by two dudes in bowler hats and tied up in a Mr. Softy truck, where Archie Clone, who has a thing about food, poured soft serve ice cream over their heads in an attempt to freeze them to death. Fortunately, Coke was able to cut the ropes with the sharp edge of the Pez dispenser he had hidden in his back pocket. Whew, you sure missed a lot of stuff. You might want to seriously go back and read the book. I'm barely scratching the surface here. Okay. After a quick stop in Avon, Ohio, the duct tape capital of the world, the McDonald's spent a day at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, where they were trapped in a recording studio and forced to listen to Megadeth at a volume meant to cause one's head to literally explode. Luckily, they had picked up some duct tape in Avon. They were able to wrap it over their ears, punch a hole in the glass roof, and slide down the side of the pyramid-shaped building. Their dad, Dr. McDonald, who was a history professor, decided to write his next scholarly book about President Herbert Hoover. He was thrilled to learn that Hoover Historical Center was right down the road in North Canton, Ohio, but when they got there, they discovered that the Hoover Historical Center is devoted to William Hoover, the guy who started the Hoover Vacuum Cleaner Company. And like the vacuum cleaner, that really sucked. Got that all? Got all that? Oh, I forgot to mention, the Twins also visited a hot dog bun museum, the Spy Museum, and the largest collection of outhouses in the world. Plus, Coke got sprayed with poison gas in a highway rest stop bathroom by a guy wearing cowboy boots and whistling the Yellow Rose of Texas. You'll have to read the book to get the details on all that stuff. No time for it here. Finally, after deciphering a series of increasingly complicated secret messages, the Twins were led to the Museum of American History in Washington, D.C., where they met up again with their nemesis, Archie Clone, along with his henchmen, a SWAT team, and ski masks. Archie's plan was to steal the museum's prize artifact, the top hat Abraham Lincoln wore on the night he was assassinated. Archie Clone dragged Coke and Pep up to the roof of the museum where his helicopter was waiting. His plan was to kill the Twins by dropping them on the tip of the Washington Monument, but at the last possible moment, they jumped out of the chopper and Pep threw a Frisbee grenade to blow up Archie Clone's helicopter, killing him in a giant fireball. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Okay, one more. Did I mention that the Genius Files never say genius is totally inappropriate for children? Really? Now that I've had the chance to think things over, it's good that you didn't read the book. It would have corrupted your innocent mind. Anyway, the story ended the next day with Aunt Judy's big wedding in Washington. And guess who she married? Spoiler alert! Was Dr. Warsaw. The lunatic who was trying to kill Coke and Pep the whole time. Bet you didn't see that coming. Yeah, it turns out that Dr. Warsaw survived the fall at the house on the rock. Life and death can be funny that way. So that's what's happened. Whew! Let's see you try to sum up a 288-page book in 8 breaths. I think it took me 10 or 11. In any case, now you're up to speed. You're probably anxious to read this book to find out what happens to the McDonald twins next. Now that we got all that preliminary nonsense out of the way, let's get to the cool part. The part where Coke gets thrown into a giant shredder. So turn the page and get started, because if you don't read this book, The Genius Files number 4 is going to make no sense at all. Chapter 2, Uncle Herman. And I will slow down to a reasonable reading pace now. Our story begins in Washington, D.C., where the Genius Files Never Say Genius left off. By the way, if you'd like to follow the McDonalds on their journey, it's easy. Get on the internet and go to Google Maps, MapQuest, Rand McNally, or whatever navigation website you like best. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now, type in the Lincoln Memorial, Washington, D.C., and click Search Maps. Click the little plus or minus sign on the screen to zoom in or out until you get a sense of where the twins are. See it? That's our starting point. There's a picture in the book of Lincoln Memorial. It was July 4th, a beautiful sun-drenched afternoon in the nation's capital. The temperature outside was almost 90, but you couldn't ask for a better day to have a wedding. The sad eyes of Abraham Lincoln looked down over the 100 or so guests. Do you, Judy McAllister, take this man to be your husband in the holy state of matrimony? Will you love him, comfort him, honor him, and keep him in sickness and in health? for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, in sadness and in joy, as long as you both shall live. I will, Aunt Judy said quietly. Coke turned to look at his mother, who was beaming up. She and Judy, her little sister, had not always gotten along while they were growing up, but all was forgiven now. The minister turned to face the groom, who was sitting in a wheelchair. And to you, Herman Warsaw, take this woman to be your wife in the holy state of matrimony. Will you love her, comfort her, honor, and keep her in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, in sadness, and in joy, as long as you both shall live? I do. By the power vested in me by the District of Columbia, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. For a moment or two, Coke and Pep didn't quite grasp what they had just heard. Did that minister really say Herman Warsaw? It couldn't be. Dr. Warsaw was dead. Coke had personally karate kicked him out of the infinity room back in Wisconsin a week earlier. There was no way he could have survived the fall. And besides, they had seen Dr. Warsaw's obituary in the newspaper. Maybe this guy was a different Herman Warsaw. But nope, there he was, sitting in a wheelchair, all decked out in a tuxedo and getting married, kissing Aunt Judy. As smart as they were, it took another moment or two for Coke and Pep to fully process the information. Dr. Warsaw was the reason they had been forced to jump off a cliff near their home in California. He was the reason they were locked in a burning school, pushed into a sandpit, and nearly drowned in a vat of bubbling spam. And it was because of him that they were zapped with electric shocks, lowered into boiling oil, chased through the streets of Chicago. If Aunt Judy was their mother's sister, and she was marrying Dr. Warsaw, that meant that Dr. Warsaw was now Uncle Herman. They were related. Dr. Warsaw would be part of their family. How do you sit around the table on Thanksgiving with the man who tried to kill you? Pep's jaw dropped open and the blood drained from her face. Are you okay, sweetie? Asked her father. You're white as a ghost. And that's when Pep's eyes rolled back in her head. She collapsed. Chapter 3. Now it's personal. We need a doctor over here. People were hollering for help before Pep had even hit the ground. She was unconscious, lying on the grass for about 30 seconds. When she opened her eyes, a doctor was leaning over her. Dr. Herman Warsaw. Women, for unexplained reasons, found him irresistible. He was an odd-looking man, extremely thin and squinty-eyed. Dr. Warsaw was a chain smoker who dressed in baggy suits that made it look like he belonged in an old gangster movie. Years before, he had been a brilliant inventor who made a fortune with a GPS for people to track down their lost pets. A millionaire many times over, he got bored with making money and turned his attention to solving society's problems by enlisting the young people of the world. Then, of course, came 9/11, when the seeds of his insanity were germinated. She'll be okay, Dr. Warsaw proclaimed. The heat must have gotten to her. She just needs a little air. He had actually climbed down from his wheelchair to sit on the grass next to Pep. Somebody handed him a water bottle, and he put it to her lips, cradling her head in his arms like she was an injured puppy. What an adorable young lady, he said. Yikes. Pep, too petrified to move or speak, just stared at him, eyes wide open. Coke watched from a few feet away, dumbfounded, as his sister was being nursed back to health by the man who had repeatedly tried to murder them. Dr. Warsaw seemed to have matters well in hand, so the other grown-ups drifted away into small groups to do what grown-ups love to do, make small talk. Catch up, introduce each other, discuss the weather as if it mattered. Mrs. McDonald ran over to hug Aunt Judy and congratulate her. When the other grown-ups had become sufficiently distracted, Dr. Warsaw lowered his voice so only the twins could hear. So we meet again, he whispered, his voice dripping with hatred. I should just choke your sister to death right now, Coke. And I should just throw you on that wheelchair and push it down the steps, Coke said, but that wouldn't look very good in front of all the relatives. I never expected you two to make it this far, Dr. Warsaw said quietly. I thought I had gotten rid of you back in Cleveland at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'll say one thing about you, brats. You're quite resourceful. And I thought you were dead at the house on the rock after we pushed you out of the infinity room, Pep croaked. I almost was, thanks to you little punks, Dr. Warsaw whispered. Just about every bone in my body broke when I hit the ground. The doctors say I may never walk again. Boo-hoo, Coke said sarcastically. We were just defending ourselves, Pep protested. You were trying to kill us. Yes, and after that you killed my protege, Archie. I spent years training that fine young man to carry on with my work. He was the son I never had. Tears welled up in Dr. Warsaw's eyes as he talked about Archie Clown. He was trying to kill us too, Pep pointed out. He was going to drop us on the tip of the Washington Monument. Oh, it's always about you, isn't it? Dr. Warsaw sputtered, his face clenched. Well, listen to me, you spoiled brats, and listen good. The differences between us have nothing to do with the Genius Files program anymore. Now, it's personal. Well, what are you going to do to us? Pep asked. Right now, sadly, I am in no condition to do anything to you, Dr. Warsaw told them. But these broken bones will heal soon enough, and when they do, I'm going to track you down like dogs and make you pay for what you did to me and my young friend Archie. Believe me, you're going to wish you never tangled with me. We already wish we never tangled with you, Pep said. You started it. Don't argue with him, Coke told his sister. He's insane. Perhaps, Dr. Warsaw said, insanity and genius often go hand in hand. Let's blow this pop stand, Pep said as she stood up and brushed the grass off her dress. Dr. Warsaw grabbed her wrist roughly before she could get away. Oh, and by the way, he said, if you say one word about this to any of this to your parents, I will kill them both. I don't care if we're all related now. Mark my words, you know I do not make idle threats. The other grown-ups, having run out of small talk, straggled back to get their belongings and say their goodbyes. Mrs. McDonald and Aunt Judy were arm in arm, reminiscing about their childhoods. I'm so glad the whole family was able to be here for our special day, said Aunt Judy. We wouldn't have missed it for the world, replied Mrs. McDonald. You two seem so happy together. It was love at first sight, Aunt Judy gushed. The second I set eyes on Hermie, I knew I had met the kindest, sweetest, most wonderful man in the world. You are too kind, my love, said Dr. Warsaw as he pulled himself back into the wheelchair. Hermie? Asked Coke. Pep looked like she might pass out again. You okay, Pep? Asked her father. I'll survive, she said. Dr. Warsaw let out a nervous laugh. I'm glad you had the chance to meet our children, said Mrs. McDonald, now that you and I are family and everything. Yeah, family, muttered Coke. One big, happy family. You have two lovely children, Dr. Warsaw said, pinching Pep's cheek just a little harder than necessary. We had a nice chat just now. I look forward to getting together again very soon. Maybe after our honeymoon is over, added Aunt Judy. We're going to California. Well, that's perfect, said Dr. McDonald. So are we. After lots of hugs and kisses all around, Aunt Judy wheeled Dr. Warsaw over to a van that had been specially outfitted with a wheelchair lift. She helped him inside. A dozen cans had been tied with string to the rear bumper, and the words "Just Married" were written on the back window. All the guests gathered around to wave their goodbyes and good wishes to the happy couple, while the strains of Elvis Presley's "Love Me Tender" played in the background. As Aunt Judy was starting up the van, Dr. Warsaw turned his head to make eye contact one last time with Coke and Pep, and as the van was pulling away, he glared at them with an evil eye. All right, actually, I think we have time to do one more chapter because I want to make sure we get this book done before we're done with book club. So chapter 4, what would Lincoln do? Actually, I'm going to stop just a second there. I don't know. I haven't read far enough to know if this gets revealed or not. Is it possible that Dr. Warsaw met Aunt Judy and thought, oh my gosh, if I convince her to marry me, then the kids they'll take this cross-country trip? Was it all set up? I just don't believe it was a coincidence. I think it was a setup. So we'll find out. All right, chapter 4, what would Lincoln do? What are we going to do now? Pep asked her brother as the happy newlyweds drove away. I don't know, Cook said glumly. Why do you think Aunt Judy would marry a monster like Dr. Warsaw? Pep asked. Why did Ava Braun marry Hitler? Coke replied. Why did Osama bin Laden have 3 wives? Why do murderers get marriage proposals in prison? Some women like bad guys. Girls, no. Stick with the nice guys. Standing just 10 feet away, their mother could no longer hold back her tears of happiness. Didn't Aunt Judy look beautiful? Mrs. McDonald gushed, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I can't believe my little sister's married. She was radiant, and what a great guy. She and Hermie looked so happy together. Hermie? To Coke and Pep, his nickname sounded like a disease. He seems like a nice fella, agreed Dr. McDonald. I like the way he got down off that wheelchair and helped Pep after she fainted. Not many people would do that. He must have had a lot of experience taking care of kids. Coke and Pep looked at each other in disbelief. Yeah, said Coke. I bet he's taking care of a lot of kids. Mrs. McDonald blew her nose into a handkerchief and seemed to be regaining her composure. I feel so sorry for Hermie, she said. Judy told me he had an accident recently. He broke just about every bone in his body, and that's why he was in a wheelchair. What happened? Asked Dr. McDonald. He took a bad fall. Coke leaned over to whisper in Pep's ear. Not bad enough. After several more minutes, the grown-ups had finished chit-chatting, performing air kisses, and making false promises to stay in touch with each other. The wedding guests started to go their separate ways. Dr. McDonald led the family up the steps for a closer look at the Lincoln Memorial. When they reached the top, the twins stared up in wonder, like every other tourist visiting the shrine for the first time. It isn't until you get close to the statue of our 16th president that you realize how imposing it is. It's 19 feet high, Coke told the family, and it weighs 175 tons. The sculptor's name was Daniel Chester French. Got a life, Mr. Know-It-All, said Pep. Be nice to your brother, warned Mrs. McDonald. It's not easy growing up with a twin who knows everything. From a very young age, Coke had been blessed with an eidetic or photographic memory. Whether he wanted to or not, he could remember virtually everything he had ever read, saw, or heard. To some people, that made Coke an interesting and informed young man. To others, he was an obnoxious blowhard. Sometimes it seemed like his mouth was an endless fountain of useless information, a human search engine with no delete button. Dr. McDonald smiled quietly. As a professor of American history at San Francisco State University, he took a secret delight in Coke's mental prowess. French's original plan called for the statue to be 10 feet tall, he informed the others, but he made it bigger so Lincoln wouldn't be dwarfed by his own monument. The parents went to read the inscriptions that were carved into the north and south chambers of the memorial. The twins continued staring at Lincoln, who looked down at them with sad eyes. Did you know that 5 weeks after he became president, the Civil War began? Coke told his sister. And then, 5 days after the war was over, he was assassinated. It kind of makes our little everyday problems seem trivial, Pep said. People have been trying to assassinate us too, Coke reminded her. That doesn't seem trivial to me. He was right, and Pep knew it. She couldn't stop looking at the statue. It was like she was trying to make eye contact with a block of marble. What do you think Lincoln would do? Pep finally asked her brother. I mean, if he was in our shoes. Wish I knew, he muttered. They walked around the memorial to read the inscriptions on the walls. Coke and Pep were both familiar with the Gettysburg Address, 407 years ago, but neither of them had ever heard Lincoln's second inaugural address. They read it all the way through to the end. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. We should keep going. I'm going, Coke told his sister. That's what Lincoln would do. We've got to stick together and strive to finish the work we're in. Pep agreed, and the twins hugged each other. A bunch of tourists were milling around, and a tour guide holding a little American flag was reading from her guidebook to a group of senior citizens gathered around her. As an enduring symbol of freedom, she told them, the Lincoln Memorial attracts anyone who seeks inspiration and hope. That's what we need, Pep whispered to her brother. Inspiration and hope. Yeah, Coke replied. Inspiration, hope, and a couple of those Frisbee grenades might come in handy too. That is where we're going to stop for today. So I hope you guys are enjoying the newest book in this series. It's Friday afternoon, so go outside and hopefully have a good weekend. Stay healthy and stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you guys all soon. Thanks. Bye.